The narrative story in 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 7 describes a powerful story of God's miraculous provision, his righteous judgment, his forgiveness and faithfulness, and how different characters react and respond to these events. At the center of this narrative block is the character of Samuel. Samuel was born in answer to his mother Hannah's prayer for a child. In fact, the name Samuel means heard by God. Samuel was then given by Hannah from a very young age to serve with Eli in the house of the Lord at Shiloh. Samuel grew up there and served God faithfully. As he grew, he learned to recognize the voice of the Lord, and it was Samuel to whom God spoke about his impending judgment on Eli and his sons for their evil deeds. Samuel grew to be recognized as a prophet of God, even when most of Israel had turned to false gods. And when things looked at their worst in the people of Israel's rejection of God, Samuel led the people of Israel back to God in repentance for their sin, and God delivered them from the attack and oppression of the Philistines. Samuel then became a judge over Israel and served God faithfully for the rest of his life. Here we have a map showing where Samuel grew up in Shiloh, where Samuel resided as judge over Israel, and some key cities in this narrative, including Mizpah, where Samuel gathered Israel in repentance and turning back to God. As we analyze the character of Samuel, we can recognize the ways in which he develops as a dynamic character. We meet him as a baby who was born in answer to his mother's prayer. We are then told that he grew in stature and in favor with the Lord and also with man. We see that he learned to listen to the voice of the Lord, and that he did not let any of his words fall to the ground. We see that he was established as a prophet of the Lord, and that he became a judge of Israel, and that he remained a judge over Israel for the rest of his life. So we can see that even as Samuel remained faithful in serving God, he continued to grow and develop in his relationship with God and his role in serving him. We can also see how Samuel interacted with other characters in this narrative. In his interactions with Eli, we can see that he ran to Eli when he thought that Eli was calling him, and he listened to Eli when he instructed him. We also see that he was afraid to tell Eli what God had said about his judgment on Eli and his family, but that he did eventually tell Eli everything that God had said. We can also see how Samuel interacted with God himself. We see that he ministered before the Lord and grew in favor with the Lord, and that the Lord was with him. We see that he was established as a prophet before the Lord, and that the Lord revealed himself to Samuel. We also see that Samuel prayed to the Lord on Israel's behalf, and that he set up an altar to the Lord in worship for what he had done in delivering Israel. We can also look at how Samuel interacted with the people of Israel. We see that Samuel served the Lord faithfully, and by so doing, he grew in favor with the people and was recognized as a prophet. We see that he commanded the people to put away their foreign gods, and he commanded them to direct their hearts to the Lord and serve him only. Samuel then gathered all Israel and judged them at Mizpah and led them in turning back to God. Then after God delivered them from the Philistines, Samuel set up a monument for the people to remember how God had delivered them, and he continued to judge Israel all the days of his life. In each of these interactions, we can see a theme of Samuel's upright character and his faithfulness to God, and all this in the face of a household and a nation who had turned away from God. So, as we take a look at the life of Samuel and what's recorded about him in this narrative block in the first 7 chapters of 1 Samuel, there are many lessons we can learn. We can see that Samuel served God faithfully from a very young age. He listened to God and obeyed him. He didn't let any of his words fall to the ground. And he remained faithful to God even when others around him were either passive or directly opposed to God. And he continually pointed others to God in everything that he did. But perhaps the key lesson from this whole narrative comes from what Samuel says In chapter 7, verse 3, he said, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord, and serve Him only." This is a powerful message, and it echoes what Jesus said in these verses. "And if any one of you does not renounce all that he has, he cannot be my disciple. And if anyone serves me, he must follow me. Where I am, there my servant also will be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him." Samuel's life, his character, and his message point us directly to Jesus and what he calls each one of us to in repentance and surrender to him. Samuel lived this life of surrender and obedience to God. Now the question is, will you do the same?